This interview is with the legendary Singh, otherwise known as Hate5Six. Hate5Six initially started in 2008, the name coming from his initial area code 609 changing to 856. Sonny has over 110,000 subscribers on YouTube alone, and his videos have been seen, shared and appreciated all over the world, often with surprise viewers such as Hayley Williams and Mike Patton. As well as bands, Sonny uses his platform to highlight social and political issues, including ICE, the Black Lives Matter protests and much more. In March 2019, he left his full-time job and started Hate5Six full-time, relying on Patreon subscribers, and has travelled filming shows continually until the pandemic hit. Despite this, Sonny has still been filming live sessions for bands and recording studios, and recently filmed the set for Tala for Knotfest at Willow Glen State Penitentiary. This interview was filmed on the third day of the Have Heart European reunion shows. We started out in Wurzburg, then drove with our friend Josie to Frankfurt. From Frankfurt we drove to the next show in Cologne. Straight after the Cologne show, we went back to hotel but didn't sleep as Sonny had to back up all the footage we'd taken from the past 2 days. From there we got a taxi to the airport and flew back to the UK. From the airport we got a train, then a taxi to the venue and filmed the matinee Have Heart show. This is how we spent our break between the matinee and evening show on no sleep.
I started going like 2000, 2001, I was a freshman in high school. That's when my friends were starting like punk and ska bands. So the bands that I fell in love with were there was a terrible three-piece that my friends were in called Roadside Assistance. And I was obsessed. It was like an awful punk band, but I filmed as much of their shit as I could. Because for me it was like, I can't play an instrument, but I want to be involved with what they're doing. So I was like, oh, I'll pick up a camera, because I was also riding BMX and I wanted to start doing BMX videos. So I thought it'd be cool to like film them. And at the time, again, this is like 2001, in my head I was like, oh, I'll like sell DVDs and people will buy them. And my dad was like, you're an idiot, you're 14, no one's gonna buy these DVDs, you're gonna waste all this money. And then I thought in my head, like, maybe there's a way to one day like post it online. And people were like posting stuff online before YouTube, but it was very difficult to do it. So in my head I was like, man, I wish there was an easier way to do this online, but like I said, it kind of just like didn't exist. So it was bands like them. There's a band called Lower Merion that was like more indie, post-hardcore kind of thing. So that's the kind of stuff that I was really into. Like Southern New Jersey, outside of Philly, was really well known for its like pop punk and indie rock in like the 2000s, something like that. So that's the stuff I was like gravitating towards. And just going to shows, like I would invariably see like a hardcore band, and that's like my origin story is like a little bigger than that, but that's like one of the gateways that I got into it. No, he was into like metal. He was into like metal and hip hop, and that's where it started. So I remember he took me to Ozfest 2001. So it was like Black Sabbath, Slipknot, Crazy Town, Linkin Park, Disturbed, all these like weird, like typical metal bands would see at a fest like that. And then the side stage had a band that had Mudvayne, and it had a band called Hatebreed. And I was like, yo, I remember seeing Hatebreed, and I remember hearing like Burn the Lies, and I overheard and I was like, this shit is amazing. And so it was like, that was like the first real hardcore band that I saw. And again, around the time I was going to these local high school shows, and like, they were kind of like hardcore bands. So it was like a confluence of seeing Hatebreed and like friends doing stuff in that, like adjacent to hardcore. And again, like, because my brother got me Rage Against the Machine, I was like researching them and found Inside Out. So it was like this whole like perfect storm of like discovering hardcore bands. I think it's because of the Rage connection, because like Rage is the first band I fell in love with. I was like, oh, Zach was in a hardcore band, like, and something about it is just very organic and very like real when you listen to it and when you watch old recordings. And especially like, I have oral histories where I've talked to people like both in the band and people who saw it, and everyone's just like, there was never a band like that. Seeing them live, like you felt it. And just so collecting these stories from other people like made me appreciate in my head like what it must have been like to see them. And even just like watching live recordings, you can tell that there's like a certain dynamic that's happening between like Zach and Vic, guitarist, and it's a very volatile like relationship they had in terms of like feeding off each other creatively, and I could sense that from those videos that I was seeing and just from the live recordings I was hearing. So I just really gravitated to that, and also like the lyrical content I felt like was dealing with. It's interesting for me because I've always been interested in like how rage began, like where did it come from? And if you look at like Inside Out was talking about spirituality, like dealing with, like lyrically it's dealing with a lot of like introspective, how do I fit into a bigger picture of society and things like that. So for me it's really fascinating to like look at where Inside Out split off into like rage, and I mean Vic left to do Shelter and then later went away, but if you start looking at like how things branched, it's like lyrically Inside Out was dealing with like introspection, but also how does someone fit within a larger context of society. And it's interesting when you think about it because Zach went in the one direction of like, here's how we exist within society, and you look at the lyrics that Vic wrote for 108, it's just a lot of introspection, like how do I deal with the ego in the self and like deal with my own being. So it's cool for me to just to like, in terms of tracing how rage started, just like going further back and just like seeing the elements that influenced both, like how elements from Inside Out both influenced rage and like what is my other my favorite hardcore band. Yeah, so for me, I gravitate towards messages. Yeah. I value lyrics, and that's for me that's what got me into this because I feel like that's music is a way of communicating ideas, and we all come to these shows and scream these words because they clearly mean something to us. So for me, it's always like, let's peel it back and see what the inspiration and motivation is for these lyrics. Because again, it's like, our bands are like up on stage screaming their fucking brains out. Like, what is it? Where does that come from? What does it mean? So I'm always interested in like tracing it back and seeing what inspired this, what led to this next band that came from this other band. So I played saxophone in middle school. Okay. I was terrible at it. I tried picking up a guitar in college, and it was around the time I was like filming more, and I was like, I don't have time to do BMX and filming and guitar, so I had to stop. I've always been asked, like, you should sing for a band, but I don't know how to, like, I can't, it's hard for me to picture writing lyrics. I'm always inspired just by anyone who takes the initiative to do something. Yeah. Like, the hardest part about doing anything is just starting to do it. Yeah. So it's nice, I'm always excited to see a young person start a zine, start filming shows, start taking pictures, start booking, because that's the first step towards doing something productive. So, I mean, like, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without, like, Joe Hardcore. Yeah. Joe Hardcore opened a lot of doors for me, and he's a very polarizing figure, but it's also like, I recognize that, I mean, again, he had made it possible for me to like shoot bigger shows and get my foot in the door, so he's a friend of mine, and it's a controversial thing, I think it's a controversial thing, but I will stand by my friendship with him, yeah, he is there when I need it at the end of the day, and he's there, or I'm there for him when he is dealing with stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I admire that he has done it for so long, and has really become I think he's become a better person. He's not the same person that he was, and I think that his conviction to putting on shows for young kids in Philadelphia, for giving them something to do, has really given him a sense of purpose that I don't think he had before. So the first This Is Hardcore I went to was 2008. A friend called me, "Let's go." I was like, all right, I never went before. Yeah. And we went, and that year there was a company called Floating Point Media. They were filming a lot back in the Philly area, and they would like do DVDs and things like that. So they had like this huge production, like multiple cameras, and they had like the cameras were tethered and the lines were running back to the front of house, and there was someone there cutting the angles live on like a switchboard. Yeah. And I spent the whole time just like, man, I want to do this. And I wasn't paying attention to the bands, I was paying attention to the people filming, to the person editing, and the whole time I was like, man, I wish I could do this. Yeah. And the next year, Floating Void dissolved for whatever reason, and I had been filming random shows in Philly, so Joe he knew who I was, and I just messaged him on a local Philly message where he was like, hey, like, I heard you need a video person, can I come out? And he was like, yeah, let's just try it. So I filmed that first year, and people were saying like, dude, Sonny did a better job with one camera angle than what we had before. Yeah. No diss on Floating Boy at all, but it was, I think people recognized, I think Joe immediately recognized the fact that like, the coverage I was providing him was, like you can go back and relive the entire fest, start to finish. And that's not something you could do before. And so he realized that it was like free promotion, 24/7, 365, you know, because I was posting, I forget how often I was posting the sets back then, but he realized how important it was. And so after that first year, which was 2009, he was like, you're coming back next year. And that was basically the start of our friendship, is he recognized that I had a drive, and I think that's why we get along. We come from very different backgrounds, and in like my passion is video, his passion is like putting on shows, but he saw in me a similar drive that he has in terms of just like wanting to be the best version and just wanting to like take everything to the next level. Yeah. I think that's why he was like very eager to have me on board. Yeah, it changes a lot. Yeah. The ones that come to mind are like Catharsis. I say this a lot in old interviews. Like Catharsis played in a small loft space in Philly right after This Is Hardcore. So This Is Hardcore is great, thousands of people, but Catharsis played in a small room with like hundreds of people. It was super intimate, and I felt like I nailed a lot of the shots in that. There was that. There was a recent set that I filmed in St. Louis, Closet Witch, which I'd never seen before. That was very intense, and I felt like I nailed. And I try to film in a certain way that captures what I'm feeling, and I want that to complement like what the band is doing. And I felt like that set was another one that was done really well. There was another one, like but most of my All Else Failed sets I feel like are capturing how I want that band to be like visualized. So it really depends. Those are some ones that come to mind, but there's a lot. Love to film like Sunny Day Real Estate. I know it's not a hardcore band, but like love that band. It's like one that I would love to capture. Texas The Reason was on the list, but I knocked them out. Everyone thinks like Rage or Inside Out would be on my list, but like part of me is just like, I want to be in the crowd. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. There was another bucket list band. I can't remember off the top of my head. Like Bad Brains would be like the Bad Brains CBGB set. Like that's so iconic. It's like, I wish I could be involved in shooting something like that. That Bad Brain CBGB set would be one of them, because it's just so iconic. That would be one. Obviously, like, again, some of the early Inside Out stuff that got me interested in video would be ones that I want to sit down and like just talk about. Because, like, again, I wouldn't be doing this had I not seen some of those old live recordings in the early 2000s and like light bulb went off. Like, damn, I want to film bands now. This is what I want to do. So I got into this from tape trading. Yeah. Again, I was trading to get these Rage and Inside Out bootlegs, and it got to a point where I had nothing to offer another trader because they already had everything that I had, and so I couldn't get anything new. So it was like a gridlock. And I was like, it was born out of frustration and just like selfishness, because I wanted to see more. And I thought about it. I was like, this is not what Rage would want. Rage wouldn't want their like recordings to be treated as some sort of collateral. or like some sort of currency, like I'll trade you this in exchange for something I want. So I kind of like, one of the reasons I started filming was almost like a fuck you to the trading community. Because I was like, this stuff should be freely accessible, in my view, right? Like, people come to shows, people experience this music, it belongs to everyone in that room, and a recording should also be like accessible to people who can't be there, whether they're restricted by geography or they're too old or too young to attend the show, whatever. So for me, like, I get the mystique of something being super rare and not seen by a lot of people, but this stuff has a literal shelf life. These tapes will disintegrate, and the way I look at it is this is part of our community's history, and every piece of recorded, everything is like a document. It tells a story about a specific time and place. This one recording could be the first time this band played that song, it could be the last time, or it could be the last time the person in the front of the room who's singing along was like seen alive. Like, there's so many elements that make every recording just precious. So for me, it's paramount to like archive it and distribute it and put it out there. Because again, like, I don't own these moments, and these moments are they collectively belong to anyone who's a participant or wants to be a participant in this community. And that's largely, I mean, that's literally why I run the site the way that I do. Like, everything that I get goes out.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'll get like a random tape. I'll get a tape that has like hot water music or like Promise Ring, like really old rare recordings. But those tapes will also have like a very bizarre ska band on there that no one's ever heard. I've never heard about. There's no information about them online. But I'll post it because literally someone somewhere is going to find this and it's going to make their day.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to recognize this, and it's important to them.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, the rule is, if one person finds this worthwhile, then it's worth archiving. I mean, I've always had that sort of antagonistic approach to trolls, but it started like, I think when, I don't know if you've seen that clip of Angel Dust, when they played in Washington, D.C., there's a clip during Set Me Up where Justice isn't singing, and it's just a bunch of women on the stage doing a mic handoff and just singing along. It's the most organically beautiful thing ever. It's all perfectly timed, and it wasn't planned. They're all just like going for it. There was just so much negativity with that video, and I remember going off hard and just responding to people. And the way I thought about it was like, at first I took it personally, like people like insulting, like they're insulting the band, but are they also insulting me because I filmed it? And I thought, I was like, I don't care, I really don't care if someone doesn't like the video. And the way, what I realized eventually is like, if someone's gonna stop and talk shit on a video and they're gonna comment and they're gonna engage with it, they're engaging with the video. They're boosting up its like presence in everyone else's feed. And this is largely why I like trolling people. And this is why I engage with trolls who are commenting on like a video that has a political speech, or it has like a bunch of women singing along, or a bunch of people of color doing something. It's because these are all specific examples of, in my view, like an underrepresented perspective that needs a larger audience, right? So for me, it's like when someone's gonna, contribute their meaningless 2 cents, I will just say something random, because the algorithms literally, they will boost things based off of engagement. And if they detect that the person posting the video is commenting, it shows that it means I'm engaged in the video too. Yeah. So really what they're doing is they're acting as fuel to boost the visibility of these things that I think need to be visible. Yeah. So they're really doing my bidding. What it comes out to. So ICE is so right now there is a mass, and this has been going on for a while, deportation of undocumented people coming to America who are seeking asylum. So and ICE has been around, but what's been happening more is that families are crossing the border because they're escaping violence in South America, or there's some extreme thing happening down in South America that's forcing people to literally just like up and leave with nothing but their clothes on their backs and their children in arms and cross through treacherous terrain and waters just to get to some better life. So clearly they're fleeing something that we really don't understand. So what's happening is that there's been a like tightening of like immigration policy in the United States, and ICE is the agency that's essentially the Gestapo that's coming in and demanding that people show their papers and rounding them up and separating them, sending them to literally concentration camps. We're sending them half the family back to where they came from. So it's just a mess right now in terms of, and again, Pat's been talking about this during the half-art shows, is just the level of human rights abuses and the fact that like we are intentionally separating children from their parents. And this isn't a new thing. This is something that's been ingrained within American history, is the idea of, I mean, even generations ago, the United States was separating indigenous children from their families and sending them to boarding schools, forcing them to assimilate and lose their like connection to their culture. And again, that was done intentionally because what they were trying to do was cut the cultural connection that children had to their indigenous roots and force them to assimilate into like white, like assimilated culture. Yeah. And so this is like a methodical process that's been going on for a while. And I think that's what they're doing now. They might not admit to it, but they know that this works. It's a form of like cultural genocide. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like removing people's connection to their roots and their ancestry is what they're doing. Yeah. Because if they can do that effectively, then they can stop, you know, any sort of resistance. You know, if people don't know where they come from and they don't have a history, they have no ground to stand on in terms of what they want to fight for. Yeah. So there's a lot of pushback against ICE right now about how they are how they're enforcing these policies that are essentially just tearing families apart. And again, this isn't new, but it's just become increasingly worse. I think what's happening is that hardcore now it's what, 40 years old, 34 years old. So it's so far from the root where if you look at hardcore in the early 90s, they were drawing influence from 80s punk. And now as you go further along that timeline, newer bands were only referencing back the previous 10 years. So the older hardcore gets, the less likely it is bands are referencing the punk and the anti-establishment from the 80s. So what you have now is like the current crop of metalcore. And again, this isn't just a metalcore or what they are drawing influence from, but they're being influenced by early 2000s metalcore. So what we're seeing is that this is just the natural growth of any sort of movement, is that the things that influence the things today aren't tracing as far back. Yeah. So I think what's happening, that's partially what's happening. The other element is that hardcore it's become way more accessible through videos, through just internet in general, is that it's allowed people who are kind of tourists or on the fringes just kind of like come in, who maybe they might be in the metal scene or they might be in some adjacent space. They'll come in, maybe listen to a couple hardcore bands, and they don't understand the historical context of where hardcore comes from. So I think that's where part of the pollution comes from, is that there's this just like massive like accessibility. And that's not a bad thing. If the messages and the music within hardcore should be like spread. Like people should hear this. But again, it's I think it's invited in this idea that punk has no place in hardcore. And again, it's largely because people are coming in from different channels other than coming in through the punk route.
Catch on and be...
I hope one step closer.
I heard you just speaking about them, but I'm not listening.
Yeah. So they are doing like a youth crew-ish kind of thing. So obviously, like right now, the metalcore and like is very popular, and the bands that are doing really, really well, but I think that the pendulum is going to be swinging back the other way, because what's happening now is you have bands like One Step Closer that are providing an alternative that just sounds refreshing. So I think the pendulum is going to swing back the other way at some point, and we're going to see more youth from more bands like Mindset and things like that, and that's going to become popular. I mean, everything comes in cycles. Yeah. But I think that and again, just seeing how those guys were all very young. They're all like under 19 or 20. Some might be like 18. But seeing the evolution of their crowd reaction in such a short window just gives me hope that they're going to just be the next big thing. Yeah. There's then like the new Magnitude record has me feeling certain. And again, like they're more in the metallic. They're like drawing influence from Strain and Trial, so not so much of like the new metal. But I think what they're bringing in is a very deliberate and thoughtful set of lyrics. Yeah. And I think just seeing, again, if you watch like a Magnitude show, people are up front singing along because they're writing lyrics that people want to sing along to. So I think that the combination of bands that are creating sounds that are new, that offer something different, and also bands that are writing lyrics that people want to sing along, that's such like an amazing combination. And it can be a rare combination, and I think that's what's going to be the thing that gets people excited about the next round. The thing I tell people is don't worry too much about gear. Yeah. And again, that's the common thing you hear from photographers, but it's actually true. Like I tell people, take whatever camera you have. It's your like Fisher-Price camera, it's your dad's VHS camera, or even your cell phone. Just learn how to like capture something. Capture it in a certain way that like fits your vision. You don't have to start out big, but just like learn how to capture it, learn how to frame, learn how to like just record basically. Yeah. And the other big thing I tell people is like, if you're going to start investing in gear, like I tell people to focus on getting clean audio, because what's going to get someone to want to like watch and listen to your video is whether they can actually hear it. Yeah. So I mean, iPhones and most modern cell phones film in 4K. Yeah. So you're going to get decent video. I mean, the average person is going to not know the difference between a high-end camera. Video files will, yeah. But if you're just starting out, like I would say investing in a good microphone or a digital audio recorder, learn how to sync that with your video, learn how to master that process, and once you've gotten to a point where you know how it works and you're happy with it, like buy a better camera and then slowly build up that way. For me, that's how I think my channel grew, is like I started creating content, I started creating videos that were listenable, more so than other stuff that was around, and I slowly just like improved on that iteratively, and that's how I was able to get like a returning set of people who are constantly coming back to watch my stuff. People always ask me if I do documentaries. I get iffy about them because I feel like I'm a perfectionist, and I don't know if I would ever I would start on an Inside Out documentary and I don't think I would ever finish it because there would always be that thing that I'm missing. So I've been asked by people connected to Inside Out, like you should do it, and I'm like, I want to get blessings from everyone in the band before I go down that route. Philly hardcore, there's been some documentaries. I don't know, I think that I would need a good premise, because so many documentaries are like, they focus on this is what it was like, it's very nostalgic, which you do need that element, but I feel like a lot of them end up focusing too much on that. So I don't know, but then again, just by the nature of a documentary, it's going to be dated at some point, so I don't know, I have plenty of live footage. I think I would need to get burned out on filming live shows to just take a step back and just want to work on a documentary. I am staring out at dawn that get robust. Not the dust. Yeah, not the dust is great. I'm trying to think of like more current bands. I'm trying to think who played Carry the Way that I really liked. I see their name right now, I can't think of it. We were just talking about that the other day.
Burnouts, Payday, Blind Authority,
The Color Poison the World.
Oh, Renounce.
Renounce, yeah, Renounce. Renounce is amazing. Like, Renounce plays that type of metalcore that I fucking loved growing up. So they're great. Yeah, and like the bands I saw at Carry Weight were like, it was incredible. Like, I've been wanting to come back since then. It depends. I mean, certain cities in the US were just very violent. This felt like, I mean, the UK shows that I went to felt like average, not in a generic, boring sense, but like not overly violent, but also not teen. So the shows that I've been to here have been great experiences. There's definitely more women and more like better representation, both in terms of people in bands, but also in just attendance as well. Like going to a show now, it's not out of the ordinary to see the Harzmascher be like a bunch of women or a bunch of people of color, and that's not something you would have seen like when I first started going to shows. So that's been a nice visible change.